Hi, it's Dwyer here for part 2 of our talk on Tiffinney Crawford's death. Right? Again, remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Now, in the closing moments of the first part, I talked about the fact that when the police questioned Jason Crawford, who of course had immediately called them to the scene of his wife's death, there are critics who claim that Crawford didn't talk about his wife's affair. I believe that when you're talking with the cops about the death of your spouse, many people would be protective of their spouse's reputation. What's the point of talking about her affair? Right? The point here is for the police to see your wife and to gather the forensic information needed, to hear the mechanics of where you were when your wife was shot, what you observed. Right? Let's make another point too. There were only 2 people in the vicinity of Tiffinney's death. Tiffinney and, of course, her spouse. Now, Jason Crawford has been criticized for not directly answering the question posed by the police as to how his wife died. Now, I believe that citizens, residents, have a reasonable expectation that the police are going to do their job. Right? If you call the police and they come and you're telling them what happened, right? You're expecting the police to figure out that your wife shot herself. Understand, Jason doesn't see her shoot herself, right? Rather, he's over by the house when she fires the shots. So I believe it's reasonable for Jason to say what he told them, which is, I was over by the house and then I heard 2 gunshots. Right? Understand, he can only talk about his personal knowledge, what he has seen and heard. It's a leap for him to then say, well, she killed herself, even though that should be obvious to everyone. In other words, he's telling the police what he has personally observed. I don't believe it's improper at all for him not to have said, she killed herself, right? He's putting himself at the vicinity, within hearing range. He admits to the cops that they were having problems, that he just found out about her affair. Right? He's telling the cops he was over by the vehicle moments before walking away and going to the home to get more of her clothes. He tells the cops that he told her, look, in essence, our marriage is over. I don't want you back in the home. He says all of that. He even goes further, tells the cops where he was when he heard the gunshots. I believe it's an overreach, since he didn't personally see her shoot herself, to require him to tell the cops, well, she shot herself, right? You can imagine, had he gone there, they would have then said, well, did you see her shoot herself, right? Even though he had already told them he was over by the house when he heard the gunshots. So let's continue. The medical examiner's testimony is that Tiffinney is shot in the temple from 10 inches away. But understand, that testimony is contested by the defense expert, right? Dr. James Lapidion. Well, let me just point out that the defense expert pointed out the obvious. Tiffinney has a full head of hair, right? Unlike me, Tiffinney has a full head of hair. Now, if she were bald like me, you'd be able to tell from the skin abrasions, from the burn marks on the skin caused by hot gunpowder, how far away the shot was. Again, by reading the skin. The defense expert, we'll call him Dr. James, I'm sure I've butchered his last name. The defense expert pointed out that you don't know how close or far the gun was from her head because she has a full head of hair. In other words, the gun could have been closer to her head. The hair would have absorbed some of the heat. The hair would have absorbed some of the gunpowder residue. Because she has a full head of hair, we don't know how close or how far away the gun was. Now, of course, on the 48 Hour show, they have the ME. Then talking about how there's no blood on the door of the car to Tiffinney's left. Right, folks? I think the public puts too much stock in expert witness testimony. I can tell you, I've had multiple cases where I've had experts testify and the other side has a competing expert. Right? Of course, these experts will talk about the science as if the science is not subject to challenge. In a case like this where you've seen photos of Tiffinney, there's a photo of Tiffinney here in the identifying video. Right? I've placed photos of Tiffinney. With a full head of hair, I don't believe we can say with certainty that the gun's 10 inches away. What I want people to do too is to raise their hand. Now, understand, the first shot, which hits Tiffinney in the face, doesn't kill her. Right? Doesn't kill her. This is a moment of high stress. If Tiffinney then decides to fire a second shot to end her life, right, are you certain that that gun's not going to be at least a few inches away from her head? I would say the fact that she has a full head of hair makes the medical examiner's testimony subject to debate. You had another doctor at the trial, the defense witness, the defense expert, openly question it. I think there is room for a difference of opinion here. I don't view the medical examiner's testimony as establishing guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. Now let's add our own 2 cents here, and this is the heart of the case. Some suicide victims want their suicides to look a certain way. Now understand, it's not disputed that Tiffinney is right-handed. It's also not disputed that the shots come from her left side. Well, I want people to think this one through. If Tiffinney shoots herself in the head with her right hand, and she's in the driver's seat, right? Then, just understand that the blood, her brain tissue, the bullet would hit the window on the right-hand side shatter the window if the window is up, and that's unclear. And of course, her brain tissue and the bullet would fly outside the car. Right? Understand, if I shoot myself in the face with my right hand and I'm in the driver's seat, then folks, here is the car window. If it's down, then the bullet's flying out the car without even hitting glass. And of course, my brain tissue's flying out the car. If it's up, the bullet's still flying out of the car, but it shatters the window. And of course, my brain tissue would go out the car, be in the driveway, right? Be next to the vehicle, be on the door. Now, here's where I believe observers need to think about Tiffinney's public awareness, right? First of all, we know there is at least one child, Logan, Jason Crawford's oldest son, in the house. Right, folks? Tiffinney may have not wanted Logan or other children to see her brain tissue on the side of the car. She might have been socially conscious. Let's remember, Tiffinney actually runs an organization. Tiffinney, like me, has made videos. She has a public persona. People know her. She has a reputation. Let's say she's distraught in the car. She might realize, right hand, my brain tissue is out the car for the neighbors and kids to see. Right? She might even think about others and think, I shoot with my right hand, the bullet flies out of the car, could hit people, could hurt people. Right? If she's someone who's cognizant of her social profile. As hubby walks away from the car saying the marriage is over, has thrown clothes at her, and is going into the house to get more clothes, a distraught Tiffinney may have thought, okay, let me privately end it here in the car. While the right hand leads to your brain tissue out of the car and the bullet out of the car, your left hand keeps all of that in the car, doesn't it? Right? If I'm leaning this way, I can shoot myself with my off hand. My brain tissue falls into the car. Right? If the first shot doesn't kill me, and we know the first shot is not fatal. We keep hearing about 2 shots. Folks, if you're trying to kill yourself and the first shot to your face is not fatal, if you're determined to kill yourself, you're going to fire a second shot. She fires the second shot toward the side of her head. Right? If she's leaning this way, that second shot, let's just do the chart of the bullet. That second shot, she could have leaned this way, so the second shot hits the seat. Right? Understand, she's firing away from the door. The ME thinks it's a big deal that there isn't blood on the door. Why would there be if she's firing away from the door? Understand, too, on 48 hours, we don't hear enough as to her actual position because it makes a big deal at the time she's shot. Right? If she's sitting upright, then there's a chance that she would shatter the passenger side window. I believe Tiffinney distraught. Right? According to 48 hours, She was afraid to tell her husband about the affair because she thought it would hurt him. If she's a thoughtful person who's thinking about other people's feelings as much as a philanderer can, she may have been leaned over. She may have decided to end her life in the car and not have the side of her head blow out of the car. So, she's right-handed. I don't believe it's out of the realm that she kills herself, given that she's in the driver's seat with her left hand. I also haven't heard any evidence whatsoever that would suggest that after she shot herself the first time in the face, right? She shoots herself in the face, that shot would have prevented her from firing a second shot that actually kills her. In other words, the first shot doesn't sever her spinal column, deprive her of the ability to shoot herself a second time. I believe it's a better headline than it is a piece of evidence that she shot with her offhand and that she shot twice and it's a suicide. When you hear it at first glance, you say that couldn't have happened. When you think it through and realize that Tiffinney is a public figure with a growing organization who has done videos, who has at least one child in the house, there's a possibility that she decided to end her life. She's seeing a therapist, for crying out loud. There's a possibility that she may have decided to end her life in the car, didn't want the bullet going out of the car, didn't want parts of her body going out of the car, didn't want a bloody scene out of the car for the kids and neighbors to see. So, let me just point out here, the police show up and the police don't do a gunpowder residue test. No one could have predicted that. On the show, 48 Hours, they're so desperate for evidence that they point out that after Tiffinney's van is released to the family had the car washed. Right now, folks, please, let's not blame the defendant for the police releasing the car to him. Right? That's the first thing. Understand, the defendant does everything the right way. As soon as whatever happened, the defendant calls the police. Right? Now, if the police decide not to do a gunpowder residue test and to release the vehicle to the family quickly, let's not then claim that the family washing the car is some effort to cover up the crime. Right? Let me also point out, too, that when you have kids involved, do you really want to have mommy's car with mommy's brain tissue hanging around in that condition for a long period of time? Right? Let me point out, too, in American history, and I know it's controversial, Lyndon Johnson has the presidential limo washed and cleaned shortly after Kennedy's assassination because he did not want the sight of the car, if you believe Johnson's version of events. I'm not sure I do, but the point is, this is how some people think. Right? Johnson did not want the car with Kennedy's blood and tissue in it to become some focal point for more morbid types looking into the vehicle. right? Well, here you have parents. I think after the car is released, and how could the defendant have predicted that? That we shouldn't then blame the defendant for washing the car. That's how I see it. Let me hear from you. My point to you is the police botched the investigation. The prosecution can't meet its burden. Now, of course, the jury very quickly decides Jason Crawford is guilty, and he's been sentenced to more than 90 years in prison. I view that as a travesty. What else is he supposed to have done? Where is the prosecution's eyewitness or ear witness? Let me hear from you. I hope you leave your comments in the comment section of this YouTube video. Thanks for stopping by.